He's almost 50 years old now, and Yoel Romero is still knocking out other professional fighters who are only half his age. Luke Rockhold went down unconscious in Perth after a single left hook. Chris Weidman was sent into his own pool of blood in a sold-out Madison Square Garden by a flying knee. And head kicks that send other fighters to the ground with skull fractures he takes without a flinch on his face. His opponents all describe it the same way. Strikes against Romero's body feel like hitting concrete. And then there's something else that fans have been speculating about for quite some time. His cyborg-like demeanor. His cervical vertebrae have been surgically fused. Even when he's sprinting, his head doesn't move a single inch. A severe limitation that should render fighting completely impossible. And yet, he displays the most insane athleticism in UFC history.
There's another left hand for Romero, an uppercut.
But then came the day when even the UFC itself could offer no explanation. Following a bout where he sustained a broken eye socket, they dispatched Romero for a medical examination. The attending physician, a seasoned veteran with 5 decades of professional experience, had truly never encountered anything quite like it. The tendons surrounding Romero's eye were 3 to 4 times thicker than those found in a typical human being. His bone structure and fibers were immensely robust, and the fractured bone was already well underway in its healing process. The answer to what this doctor saw is not found in Romero's medical file. They are found in Cuba, in a program that officially never existed. Yoel Romero was born in Cuba in 1977, precisely when the secret Soviet-Cuban sports lab program was installed. The ultimate goal: to breed indestructible fighters from the age of 9. Yoel was a part of this project, and he was, without a doubt, the most brutal living result it ever managed to produce. The real question, however, is what exactly they do to a 9-year-old boy to fundamentally transform him into someone who, even now, at almost 50 years of age, can still effortlessly knock men out.
Went to school from Monday to Fridays at a pyramid, and you just wrestled.
A pyramid meaning?
It's a pyramid school. It's a system.
Es un sistema de pirámide.
It starts at about 7 years old. All the sports in Cuba start that way. And you go up the pyramid, but you stay there for the week, and they educate you, they feed you.
The answer starts in Pinar del Rio at the close of the 1980s, in a Cuba that was on the verge of collapse. Food was strictly rationed, and electricity was available only for a few hours each day. The dusty streets of Pinar del Rio and the residential buildings were half dilapidated, with most families having little more than rice, beans, and just a bit of meat on their tables. Romero was raised alongside 5 brothers. Every single one of them went on to become an athlete. One of them, Joan Pablo Hernandez, later became a professional boxer in Europe and claimed the IBF Cruiserweight World Championship title. For this family, sport was not a leisure activity. Sport was their only way out. In 1989, Yoel began wrestling, and this is where what Joe Rogan would later on his podcast famously refer to as the Cuba experiment truly started.
The only guy who freaked me out was Yoel. Yoel Romero would look so big at 185, you're like, how is that 185? How is it even possible? They brought him to Australia and he had a fractured orbital, and they brought him to the doctor, so he gets examined, and then the doctor calls the UFC and goes, where did you get this guy? And they go, what do you mean? And they go, he's a fucking specimen. And he goes, oh yeah, he's amazing, right? And they go, no, you don't understand. He goes, I've been a doctor for 50 years. I've never seen someone like him. He said the tendons in his eyes are 3 times larger than a normal person's. He said the orbital fracture, it's already healing. Like, he's just a athletic freak. The rarest of the rare.
The Cuban sports system functioned according to a brutal logic. Those who belonged to the best were sent to a training camp such as Cerro Pelado in Havana, where Romero later ended up under the legendary coach Filiberto Delgado. The athletes lived together there, 24 hours a day. They trained 2 to 3 times daily, wrestled against each other, recovered together, and ate at the same tables. However, the food wasn't the same for everyone. The absolute elite athletes received 3 meals a day, but all the others only got 2. Anyone who slipped down in the rankings lost their evening meal. Anyone who climbed their way up got it back.
The number 5 and the number 6 wrestlers from those countries eats the same as number 1. In Cuba, it's not like that. If you're number 3, you don't eat what number 1 eats.
Wow.
And you're not going to eat the same as number 2 either. The number 1 guy has the most privilege. It's good and it's bad because it pushes you to be the best. You want to get
What's
more
the bad
food
part?
that not everybody has could be the best at what they're doing.
Right.
You're not going to have the privilege of eating a lobster.
Yeah.
You were surrounded by these animals, is how Romero himself later described the training camp in Havana. Their only real chance in life was through sports, so they trained as if their very lives depended on it, because they truly did. This is the world, the environment from which Yoel Romero truly emerged. There were no air-conditioned fitness studios, no expensive nutritional supplements, no advanced recovery boots. Instead, it was just bodyweight exercises, plyometrics, Olympic weightlifting, and 10 hours of wrestling every single day, with hunger serving as his constant unforgiving teacher. This is also the answer to the question why Jorge Masvidal years later publicly stated that he had never once seen Romero training with heavy weights during all his time at the American top team camp in Coconut Creek.
When we were training constantly together, it was just push-ups, pull-ups, squat jumps. He'd do a lot of body workouts, and he looks like he's a fucking pro bodybuilder.
And why this man, even at 48 years of age, still looks like a perfectly sculpted anatomical chart. From the mid-90s onwards, Romero began his significant ascent within the highly competitive Cuban national wrestling squad. In 1997, he made his debut appearance at the World Wrestling Championships. He ultimately finished in 5th place. For the Cuban delegation, this was considered a rather disappointing result. 2 years later, everything was different. At the 1999 World Championships in Ankara, he absolutely tore through the bracket of the 85-kilogram class. In the final match, he faced Kadzimurat Magomedov, the Russian Olympic champion from 1996. Romero won, and on that singular night in the Turkish capital, he became something he would never quite achieve again in wrestling, the undisputed #1 in the entire world. The very next year, the Olympic Games were held in Sydney. Everyone was absolutely expecting Romero to win the gold medal. He fought his way all the way to the final round, where he then faced Adam Saidiev, another Russian, and ultimately lost. It was incredibly close and quite controversial. Romero took home the silver. Many people in the wrestling community later said that this was the moment in which he was broken. Others say that it was right here he became the man who would always be on the cusp of a UFC title, but never quite grasp it. The following years were a roller coaster. Silver at the 2002 World Championship in Tehran, 4th place in Athens in 2004, another silver in 2005 in Budapest, this time against the Georgian Revaz Mindorashvili.
Fehlt auch der Saft. Jetzt ist vorbei. Noch eine Wertung, 3-0.
And then came the ban in 2006. The Cuban Wrestling Federation imposed a 1-year ban on Romero. The official charge stated he intentionally lost the 2005 match against Mindorashvili for financial incentives, a practice many insiders believed was more widespread in Cuban wrestling than officially acknowledged. Whether the accusation is true, no one knows precisely to this day, but for Romero, it was the beginning of the end of his wrestling career. A year later, he fled from Cuba. He went to Germany and started there with SV Johannes Nürnberg in the German Wrestling Bundesliga, simultaneously as a fighter and a youth coach. And then something happened that most people don't do anymore at the age of 32. He had to start completely from the very beginning once again. While in Nuremberg, Romero became acquainted with coaches Serge Kovtin and Siege Simic. The two managed the martial arts gym Nuremberg under Peter Althoff, and they began training him for mixed martial arts. On December 20th, 2009, just 17 weeks before his 33rd birthday, Yoel Romero stepped into the cage for the very first time as a professional MMA fighter. His adversary was named Sasha Weinpolter. Romero emerged victorious. In Europe, he built a record of 5 wins and 0 losses in 2 years. His finishes were bizarre. Suplexes straight from Olympic wrestling, knees from a standing position, throws that looked like he would simply lift his opponent up and then just drop him again. The American MMA talent scouts eventually got wind of his impressive skills. Strikeforce, which at that time was widely recognized as the second largest mixed martial arts organization globally, right behind the UFC, wasted no time in signing him to their roster. His Strikeforce debut in 2011 in San Diego didn't last long. In the very first round, Romero launched himself through the air with a flying knee, bringing his opponent crashing down. It was a clear foretaste of the incredible things that were yet to come.
Back up. Romero flies in with the knee for the first time. He tries to get some action.
Big brawls, but he's got to pick his shot. Fejao is doing that.
In 2013, at the age of 36, he officially signed with the UFC. At an age when most fighters are already thinking of quitting, his real career was just beginning. His UFC debut at UFC on Fox in San Jose was a warning to the entire middleweight division. When Romero stepped into the octagon, he didn't look like a new fighter, he looked like a man who had already found the shortcut to the very top ranks. And that's precisely what he went on to achieve. He won 8 fights consecutively, one after another, in the UFC. He defeated Derek Brunson. He finished the Brazilian karate master and former light heavyweight champion Lyoto Machida with a third-round knockout.
Oh, there's that. Just a beautiful knee tap there, takedown. Flung Machida down.
He overcame Ronaldo Jacare Souza, one of the most dangerous grapplers on the planet, in a very close split decision war. And on November 12, 2016, arrived the pivotal moment that would forever etch Yoel Romero's name into the legendary UFC highlight reels. This was UFC 205, held at the iconic Madison Square Garden in New York City. The venue was completely sold out with 20,000 spectators. And there, in the center of the octagon, stood Chris Weidman, the former middleweight champion who had famously defeated Anderson Silva not once but twice. Weidman was competing in his very own hometown, right here in New York. The initial 2 rounds of the fight were incredibly tight. Weidman managed to get Romero to the canvas, but Romero immediately countered. Neither of these fighters truly managed to dominate. Then, at the beginning of the 3rd round, Weidman shot for a takedown. And Romero, the 39-year-old Cuban, was waiting for exactly this moment. He leapt. In mid-air, he pulled his right knee up. The knee struck Weidman directly on the temple. Weidman toppled forward. His head bounced off his own knee. Romero landed 2 more blows before the referee finally stepped in. The hall fell silent for a moment, then it erupted. And Romero, the soldier of God, as he called himself, stood over the blood-soaked Weidman and shouted to Michael Bisping, the then champion, in the audience.
Right hand from Weidman. There's that hard kick to the body, but again, flying knee, he knocked him out.
That was the precise moment when everyone realized he was truly ready for the championship title. 8 professional fights, completely undefeated. A former Olympic silver medalist, a true champion. He was 39 years old, but still in his prime. Absolutely nothing seemed capable of stopping him now. Hey, if you've been enjoying the story up to this point, please consider subscribing to the channel. I create a brand new martial arts biography, just like this one every single week. Let's go back to Romero, because this is precisely where the chapter of his story begins that continues to infuriate many people even today. His very first title fight took place in 2017 at UFC 213 in Las Vegas. His opponent was Robert Whittaker, a New Zealand-Australian fighter possessing one of the cleanest technical foundations in the sport. This bout was for the interim middleweight title, as the reigning champion, George St. Pierre, was unfortunately injured. Romero was 40 years old, making him the oldest fighter who had ever competed for the UFC middleweight championship title. He managed to dominate the first 2 rounds of the fight. Then he inflicted an injury on Whittaker's knee with a powerful low kick, but Whittaker managed to recover and took control of the final 3 rounds. Ultimately, the decision was a split decision in favor of Whittaker.
Right now, if I'm in his corner, I'm screaming, attack the body.
See how labored it was.
And he's failing miserably.
Stuffed the shot and landed a beautiful knee.
1 year later, UFC 225 was held in Chicago, the highly anticipated rematch. This time with even higher stakes, because Whittaker had become a true champion. And then something occurred that some of his fans still haven't grasped even today. Romero didn't make weight. He weighed 0.2 pounds too much at the weigh-in, specifically 185.2 instead of 185. The title could only go to Whittaker, no matter how the fight would turn out. Romero was technically in a non-title bout, even though he knew this was likely his last real chance. 5 rounds of an absolute war. In the end, it was another split decision, and once again, Whittaker won. Some judges and analysts were of the opinion that Romero should have been awarded the victory, but the official record showed he fought Whittaker twice and he lost both times.
Much less fear of the takedown.
That's it right for Romero. Romero punches and punches here. Whittaker forced to set.
In August of 2019, at UFC 241 in Anaheim, he suffered a significant defeat that effectively removed him from any immediate title contention. Paulo Costa, who was undefeated at that point, completely dominated him for 3 full rounds. It was a unanimous decision.
Fight. Left hand lands for Yoel there. Right straight. Paulo Costa digs the underhook. Tries to reverse it.
However, the UFC was in need of a challenger for Israel Adesanya's initial title defense. Costa was injured, so the 42-year-old Romero was enlisted on very short notice. UFC 248, March 2020. Main event: Israel Adesanya against Yoel Romero, middleweight title. The fight is still considered one of the most controversial main events in UFC history. Adesanya moved around in his typical elusive stance while Romero patiently waited. Neither fighter seemed willing to commit to throwing many significant strikes. The frustrated crowd inside the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas loudly booed. Adesanya was awarded a unanimous decision victory.
In the open, really catch. Man, he's not allowing himself to get
Victory. So there it is. Israel.
Numerous commentators expressed the opinion that his victory was solely due to Romero's reluctance to step within his preferred striking distance. Still others suggested that Romero simply had absolutely no effective strategy for how to deal with Adesanya's elusive and unpredictable movement. Romero himself later admitted that this particular fight should have played out quite differently. However, at the age of 42, following 3 consecutive lost title bouts, it became undeniably clear. The UFC would simply not grant him a 4th opportunity for a title shot. Consequently, they decided to release him immediately after that very fight. Most professional fighters finding themselves in Romero's exact situation would have undoubtedly chosen to retire at this critical juncture. After 3 lost title fights, in his mid-40s, released by the world's biggest organization, it would have been easy to call it quits. But Romero chose a different path. He signed with Bellator, which was then the 2nd largest MMA organization. He moved up a weight class to light heavyweight, and he just kept fighting. His tenure in Bellator was quite marked by mixed results. He achieved 3 victories against 2 defeats, he secured wins over Alex Polizzi and Melvin Manhoef, but ultimately fell to Phil Davis. Then, in February of 2024, an unexpected event occurred, one that absolutely no one had on their radar. The PFL had acquired Bellator. As part of this significant deal, they organized a massive super event in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, which they named PFL vs Bellator Champs. Romero, now 46 years old, faced Thiago Santos there. The Brazilian ex-UFC light heavyweight title challenger. 3 rounds, unanimous decision for Romero. A 46-year-old man had controlled one of the most technically dangerous strikers of his generation for 15 minutes.
put volume together, something will get through. You can see some swelling on the calf of the lead leg.
But he didn't stop there. He went even further. In September of 2025, Romero made his debut in the Bare Knuckle Fighting Championship, which is known as BKFC. This was in the heavyweight division with a body weight of over 90 kilograms at the Hard Rock Hotel in Hollywood, Florida. His opponent's name was Teo Dukas. They fought without gloves, just hand wraps on their fists. It was a brutal clash, bone against bone. His last officially documented fight took place on the 28th of March in the year 2026. At that point, Romero was already 48 years of age. Now, the question you've probably been asking yourself since the very beginning of this video is, why is he still doing this? The simple answer would be money, but that's actually not the case. Romero has earned well over $1.7 million in the UFC, according to publicly available wage figures, plus his earnings from Bellator, PFL, and BKFC. He no longer needs to struggle just to pay his monthly bills. The second answer, I suppose, would be ego. Even that is only partially true, to be honest. Romero has never really seemed like a man who enjoys the spotlight. His nickname is Soldier of God. He prays after every single fight. In interviews, he talks more about his faith in God and his family than he does about himself. The real answer probably lies in what I called the Cuba experiment at the beginning of this video. If you're a man who at 9 years old was sent into a system where your only currency is your body, and you manage to keep that body at an elite level for over 30 years, then quitting is not a neutral act for you. It is betrayal. Thinking of the little boy in Pinar del Rio who didn't get dinner because he hadn't won enough. To the brothers who all walked the same path. To his coach, Filiberto Delgado in Havana, who then molded him into a world champion. Since 2016, after a contaminated supplement briefly affected his USADA record, Romero has completely switched his training to natural methods. Mobility, climbing, surfing, body weight, and a lot of prayer. The man lives like a monk who just so happens to be able to knock people out. And while many of his old UFC opponents have long since become commentators, coaches, or entrepreneurs, Yoel Romero is still in the cage. Not because he has to, but because the Cuba experiment won't end as long as he can still breathe.